Are you ready?
Yep.
You think you could tell us what to do?
Another week.
You think you could tell
Another
us what
bad
to
loss.
wear? You think that you're better?
The Philadelphia Eagles sit at 5-6, literally below average.
Bow to the
It's not how I had it. Birdgang Weekly is live. Let's get it. I think what I said was this. I guaranteed a loss versus the New England Patriots. But then I said this team was good enough to beat Seattle. Turns out they were good enough to beat New England and Seattle and lost both games. Now here we sit, 5-6 on the season, 5 games to go. It's supposed to be getting easier now. But here's the thing. If this team doesn't improve vastly from what we saw last week, this team won't beat the Miami Dolphins either. Birdgang Weekly is live. Ladies and gentlemen, I got a little bit of everything for you. I'm going to talk about how you should value Carson Wentz because you haven't thought about something. Some of you are ready to run this guy to town, and you realize there are 31 other towns in the NFL. What would Carson Wentz look like with some of these other teams? I'm going to tell you. Be careful what you wish for because you may not like the answer. I'm going to answer in a Cowboys fan. In spite of my better judgment, it's not like I'm going to teach him anything. We're talking about the most delusional fan base in all sports. I'm going to talk about the Eagles coaching staff as it stands right now. And I'm going to talk about the 2020 free agents. Expect this team to look vastly different. And they should. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Birdgang Weekly. Follow me, your host, GQ, a.k.a. Jeffrey Knox, on social media. Everywhere I'm the same, at GQ_4_EDA. That gets you to my Facebook page, my Snapchat, my Instagram, and my Twitter. Follow me daily on Fansided on Inside the Eagles, where I'm the site expert and co-editor. And I just can't stop writing. I'm writing all the time. Follow Thunderstorm Media on Facebook. Like us on that page. Make sure you check out the new Instagram page at Thunderstorm Media. And on top of that, do you one better. Make sure you email the show. thunderstormradio66@gmail.com. Wow. It's been an amazing week. Kind of got pushed to the background a little bit here, but congratulations to Zach Ertz. He's now exceeded 500 catches for his career. I'd probably bet money on it if I was a betting man that he probably would have rather done that and celebrate with a win. But in a loss in week 12, some good news does come out of it. Wasn't much, but we did get some good news. Carson Wentz exceeds 500 career receptions. Congratulations to him. Jordan Matthews is gone. What is going on with the Eagles front office? Can somebody tell me that? Think about this. After every bad loss, somebody's gone. Zach Brown got released after the Minnesota Vikings loss. Orlando Scandrick is gone after the Cowboys loss. Akeem Spence is gone. Andrew Sendejo is gone. And now Jordan Matthews is gone the day after the Philadelphia Eagles lose to the Seattle Seahawks. Unfortunately, however, though, Carson Walch is still the the wide receivers coach, and Press Taylor is still your quarterbacks coach. Mike Groh is still the offensive coordinator. For some reason, they still have jobs. But 14 days after signing Jordan Matthews, under the guise of the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles were dissatisfied with their wide receiver core, the wide receiver they signed to help cure this is now missing. How did Jay Ajayi do in his first appearance with the game, with the Birds? Pretty decent, actually. Most of us would probably agree that we like what we saw out of Joe Ajayi. Most of us would probably agree that after seeing what Greg Ward did, the consensus is the same with everybody. Where in Hades has he been? Oh, I remember. He was on the practice squad. Now, I have to give credit where it's due. We all know. We all can attest to the fact that there's something serious that we have to think about here. Now, I'm going to touch on this in a minute here for another reason, but I have to say it here for this subject. The coaches are smarter than we are. We all can realize that, right? Doug Peterson knows more about what he's doing than you and I. Carson Walch, I've been very critical of, but he's a better wide receivers coach than I have any capability of being. Jim Schwartz has forgotten more about football than most of us will ever know. But at the same time, there's some instances where I don't know what these guys are looking at. We all watched the preseason, right? We all can agree that Greg Ward was better than Mack Hollins, right? So why was Mack Hollins given the roster spot over Greg Ward? He serves no purpose. Mack Hollins, I mean. We were told that he has more value on special teams, and for that reason, he was given consideration in the job. I'm not exactly sure what I've seen on special teams that demonstrates that's accurate. And forget special teams. Greg Ward outplayed. Heck, you can argue that Marcus Michelle outplayed Jordan Matthews in the preseason. Yet when it was time to sign these guys to the 53-man roster, Greg Ward was noticeably absent. So was Marcus Michelle. Mack Hollins still had a job. Yes, the Philadelphia Eagles coaching staff is loaded with intelligent people. But could we also venture to state that they're a little stubborn? They refuse to admit when they're wrong. They were wrong about Nelson Agholor. We talked about him being traded all through the offseason. And they didn't. He's still here. And what's sad is, had they traded him during the offseason, they could have gotten something for him. You never would have gotten more for him than you would have gotten for him during the offseason. And now we get nothing. He's just going to leave. And his career is over. Nobody's going to sign him after this season. You do realize that, right? No, there is one possible option, and we all know who that is. Big Red Andy Reid with the Kansas City Chiefs. If he doesn't get picked up by Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs, Greg Ward's career is over. Excuse me, Nelson Agholor's career is over. I got my mind on Greg Ward because after seeing what I saw yesterday, I can't figure out why he wasn't on this team the entire time. Unless, of course, this coaching staff was just stubborn. They don't want to admit they're wrong. They don't want to admit they're wrong about Alshon Jeffrey. They're so conceited, they want us to believe that they have it all together and we're the ones that are lost. Nelson Agholor can play and he's worth $9 million. No, he isn't. Nelson Agholor is horrible. And if you remember, I told you this prior to his second season. I said it was time to move on from him then, and everybody said I was crazy. I got hate mail. I actually got a death threat. People retweeted everything that I had said and said that I was lost and sports journalism and American journalism was dying just because I said that Nelson Aguilar needed to leave. What happened? His second year, he was terrible. His third year, yes, he contributed greatly to the cause. That's Mike Groh's saving grace. That's why Mike Groh's the offensive coordinator, because the wide receiver core apparently looked decent while he was there. He was promoted to offensive coordinator. He's done nothing there. And now, here we are with an offense that looks archaic at times, that doesn't look like it's evolving, that doesn't look like it's any different than it did, since 2016? You guys talk about Tony Romo, you should talk about me. I'm sitting home and I'm calling plays, just like Tony Romo. And 9 times out of 10, I was accurate. That 10th time, they threw me a curveball. Because what used to happen was, every time Jordan Howard was in, we ran the ball. Every time Miles Sanders was in, we threw the ball. They've at least switched that up a little bit to kind of confuse the defense slightly. And that's where the 10th out of my 9 out of 10 comes from. The fact that every once in a while now, with Miles Sanders in, they'll actually run the ball. And some of that has been out of necessity, because Jordan Howard isn't there. We'll talk a little about that in a minute. I want to do something against my better judgment, and I'm going to answer something that was sent to me by a Dallas Cowboys fan. Now, upon first glance, because he was a Cowboys fan, what he had sent to me wasn't well written. It wasn't thought out. It was a little confusing in his text, but he's a Cowboys fan, so of course we have to expect that. This is what he said. LOL, bruh. I read your weak expletive article this morning. I didn't know what he was talking about because he didn't tell me which article he was talking about until later on in the text. So I'm going to skip down. The article I wrote was about Jason Kelce going on the 94 Whip radio morning show and defending his quarterback Carson Wentz. But in that article, I had stated something about Dak Prescott, which he took offense to. So I'm going to skip down a little more because, as usual with a Cowboys fan, it's kind of hard to decipher what he means from all this. But it's what he said. Funny that you had to throw Dak in there. Go to Dak's rookie season. He's defending Dak Prescott by going back to something that happened 4 seasons ago. But let's continue. Go to Dak's rookie season, and he was rated a top 10 player on the top 100. Nah, he wasn't ranked this year, but that expletive changes from year to year. If you think for 1 second he won't make the top 100 after this season, you're delusional. And guess what? He'll be ranked higher than Wentz by far, if Wentz even makes it at all. This is what you delusional Eagles fans do. Since you can't defend your false narrative of Wentz being better than Dak with stats, because Dak is slaughtering Wentz statistically, you try and use the top 100 list that has nothing to do with their play this season. Dak owns Wentz. W-I-N-C-E. Check the record book. Actually, sir, I'm not going to do you any justice by even saying your name on this show, because that is so all over the place and incorrect that I could slaughter that argument 7 different ways. But I won't. I'll instead tell a story. My reason for bringing up the top 100 in the first place was this. I live by a certain code that was introduced to me by a family member, and when they introduced this code to me, it actually had nothing to do with football. I was told by an uncle of mine, your argument is often only as valuable as your knowledge of a particular subject. Typically, people who are closer to a certain situation know more about what they're talking about than you do. which is why I say guys who have coached in 30 plus seasons of NFL football know more about coaching than you and I. So it's ridiculous for you and I to call them things like stupid. And it's a little juvenile. You're grown men and women, stop calling people names. But on the daily, ladies and gentlemen, I get hate mail from Dallas Cowboy fans. Can't imagine why that is. Your opinion is only as valuable as your knowledge of the subject. Let me explain. People often, believe it or not, debate Deion Sanders' greatness. Some of the old school, and I love them to death. A friend of mine told me once, he was actually a manager of mine at a retail store. He said, if there's an argument about the greatest cornerback of our generation, it's Rod Woodson. Rod Woodson is a Hall of Famer. I'm not taking anything away from him. Do not hear what I'm not saying. He said, give me a Rod Woodson any day over a Deion Sanders. Yes, Rod Woodson is great. We talk about numbers all the time. Go look at the numbers. Ask Deion Sanders about Rod Woodson and see what he tells you. Rod Woodson is amazing. But when you ask the guys that these guys had to cover, Michael Irvin, Jerry Rice, not just the greatest wide receiver all the time, you could argue the greatest football player of all time. Now I say Jim Brown and Walter Payton, but you can throw Jerry Rice in an argument and make a very successful argument for that. Jerry Rice always talks about how great Deion Sanders was. Jerry Rice always talks about how difficult the day was when he had to line up and Deion Sanders was on the other side. Who does Michael Irvin say is the toughest person he ever had to beat in the NFL? He'll tell you Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders is amazing. See, the reason I brought the top 100 into it and brought Dak Prescott into it is because as strange as this may sound to some of you, here's my point. The NFL Top 100 every year is voted on by players. And they're giving their opinion about other players. When you poll the players who actually play against Dak Prescott in the NFL, who train with Dak Prescott in the NFL, some of them have known Dak Prescott since the SEC days, since high school. When you talk to these people and you poll the people who play in the NFL, why didn't they say Dak Prescott is one of the top 100 players in the NFL? Because he isn't. He's shown some signs now, but he isn't one of the top 100. Dak Prescott, another thing that's ridiculous about this argument and what this guy sent me is this. I've never said Dak Prescott was better than Carson Wentz. Personally, I believe they're the same guy. Both of them are superior athletically. Both of them have cannons for arms. Both of them are hugely and immensely talented. Both of them can do things that most of the quarterbacks in the NFL cannot do. They can escape from trouble. They can make plays where there aren't any. Both of them suffer from bad coaching. Both of them need a lot of talent around them to be successful. Both of them are not going to be successful if there's not a lot of talent around to help them. The problem with Carson Wentz is this. With the amount of money that you're making, you're going to have to do that sometimes. You're not always going to have Deshaun Jackson. You're not always going to have superior weapons on the outside. Donovan McNabb, borderline, never had it. He got Deshaun Jackson at the end of his career with the Eagles. He had Terrell Owens for a season plus. Now, when he had Terrell Owens, he went to the Super Bowl. But a lot of his narrative was written with James Trash and Todd Stinkston. Yes, Brian Westbrook was good, but he also got hurt at the end of that season, remember? And the Eagles had to go into the playoffs without their best offensive weapon. See how everything fell apart without Brian Westbrook? Randall Cunningham never had anything. Keith Jackson was gone. They might have had something with Chris Carter, but Chris Carter had to get his life together. He left. Randall Cunningham, for the majority of his existence with Philadelphia, had Calvin Williams and Fred Barnett, and he won anyway. You can argue Randall Cunningham's best offensive weapon was a broken down Herschel Walker. Now, Herschel Walker for that one season was great. He scored every way that you could score. He scored on a kickoff, a punt return, via pass, and by running the ball, if I'm not mistaken. He scored every way you can do it. But Randall Cunningham at times had to elevate that roster and that offense by himself. Same thing with Donovan McNabb. Carson Wentz has to do that, especially for what he's making. And he hasn't. I have been called delusional by a Cowboys fan, the most delusional fan base in all of sports. And it doesn't even bother me because I realize how confused they are. One more story about the Dallas Cowboys fans. There was I believe it was a Football Life, and it was on Walter Payton. The subject of that Football Life was sweetness, and part of the story was being told by one of the best and the greatest Chicago Bear fans of all time. Chicago Bear fans, Chicago fans in general, sports fans are extremely loyal and some of the best fans in sports. Ashton Kutcher was actually talking about Walter Payton in some of this documentary, and he gave an example. In his example, he talked about a friend of his who was a Dallas Cowboys fan. As you might imagine, he said Emmitt Smith was the greatest running back of all time. Think of how erroneous that was. But he's a Cowboys fan. You understand where it comes from, right? In that narrative, Ashton Kutcher talked about a story where there was a Super Bowl being held in Dallas. And he was in Jerry Jones' suite. Guess who he saw? Emmitt Smith. Ashton Kutcher, like most of us, believes that Walter Payton was the greatest running back of all time. Nobody would argue with that. If you could, you're probably going to say Jim Brown. You'd be cool either way. You start a franchise, you got Jim Brown or Walter Payton, you're in pretty good shape. Ashton Kutcher believes Walter Payton is the greatest running back of all time. His friend believes Emmitt Smith is the greatest running back of all time. Oh, and by the way, Emmitt Smith, that argument was being made by a Dallas Cowboys fan. That's very important to the story. It always is, right? Ashton Kutcher and his friend walk up to Emmitt Smith and they ask him, Emmitt, who's the greatest running back of all time? Emmitt Smith said, Walter Payton. Your opinion is only as valuable as your knowledge of the subject. Emmitt Smith, as much as we may pick on him, is a student of the game, and he understands nothing was greater than sweetness, except for maybe Jim Brown. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Storm. I got a lot to talk to y'all in this next 30 minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about Carson Wentz. He has to be better. I defended him all season long, but that in week 12 was atrocious. Speaking of atrocious, did you see that tackle or that attempted a tackle that Ronald Darby made on that long touchdown run by Rashad Penny? He didn't try to wrap up. He didn't try to do anything. That was awful. Ronald Darby needs to go. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about other potential free agents in 2020 for the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll talk about their coaching staff. Before we do that, let's ride the old school bus. This is one that y'all liked the last time we played it. Old school bus. Let's get it. true hip-hop in its purest form. From the Hit Squad, Daz Effects, Mike Checker. Let's ride the bus.
Microphone check, microphone checker, microphone check, microphone checker, microphone check, microphone checker, microphone checker. Riggedy row, give me the gag suits, here I go, so riggedy flame on, Geronimo, yo, I riggedy burn, riggedy rubber when I blabber, great, I riggedy make the Wonder Twins, the actor, fake, it's crazy, I'm riggedy breaking backs and busting lips, I riggedy freak, Gladys Knight, and those freaking lips, shrimps, I'm riggedy making enough noise like Bam Bam, throw boulders from bedrock, you'll get dropped by Slam Man, so check it, I riggedy wreck it quick, oh shucks, I give it the got big ducks like Daddy Warbucks, oh Anna, I riggedy rock the Coca, Cabana, banana, split, hot, spit, so sick. I riggedy freaking from here to Bangladesh. I'm riggedy ripping flesh, plus I get fresh like this. Shish, shiggity shush, kid, you'll get done. Squish for fun. I riggedy rhyme like no one. I riggedy bum, riggedy rush, chiggity jumps, I'm savage. I shake them up and down like the Dow Jones average. I'm cocky like Rocky. I riggedy bangs the best. So diggity tell your friend chum, cause here comes that up fast.
Microphone check, microphone, you know what I'm saying?
Microphone check, microphone check, microphone check, microphone check,
you know what I'm saying?
microphone check, microphone check,
Yo, check it.
a higgity hoy that matey on my giggity got stuff low. My Saturday nights are live than Joe Blister post, so Joe. Siggity take the bait for Charlie Tuna. See, I beat the boogie banger like a sire since the boomer. I'm higgity hot to track and giggity got the mic. Jules, plus dread, so tricks call me Goldie. Last and giggity gets the scoop from Peter Jennings. Do a spin like the mag, then I fight like Peggy Fleming. Or spiggity smack a blick and yoke him up until he squeal like Hawaiian punch the captain. Now I'm maxing with to Neil. I biggity pack still. I got a big gun. I'm bringing a track from Brooklyn cause I'm Brooklyn's where I'm from. Microphone check, microphone check, microphone
Word out.
microphone
You know what I'm
check,
saying? My man, yeah, mic check, yo. Straight, yo.
microphone check,
What's up?
microphone check,
Who on the back?
microphone check, microphone check, microphone check, microphone check, microphone check, microphone check. Siggity time to get bucked. Wow, call me butter fingers cause I drippity drop nup style. Giggity eeny meeny miny mo. Chiggity bop bap, I set your rapper by the dough. Yo, I riggedy wipe my pages when I biggity build the flavor. I biggity rise the friendly sky, so now I be a sky pager. Then pew, I biggity brings the bunker, the rough, deathly puncher. Words are arch bunker. So give me the mic and I biggity light it up like Uncle Fester. Microphone checker, 1, 2, checker. Oh yeah, biggity take no tricks, I'm not the fella. The mic can even act. Stella, no Stella. If higgity comes to bum rush, Mayday, no static. I niggity knows more kids than baby. So higgity hey, not the way, but I got props. I biggity bust rhymes like slick, rip, bust shots. So when I biggity freak the funk, I be the ill funk freaker. I stiggity stole an apple from this bum named Bonita. So biggity rubber dub, I got the lips to make you flip. Bustin' heads with Eric Sherman and Mike looking traveling. Microphone
Yo, mic check, yo.
microphone check, microphone check, microphone check,
Yo, the books on the bus is in the house, you know what I'm saying? Yo, it's that time, you know what I'm saying? Straight out the sewer. Word up. So it, you know it? Yeah, check it out.
Giggity gets my grits, check the jingle. I diggity don't use but snooze like Rip Van Winkle. So twinkle, little star. I diggity slam dunk like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Numbskull, I diggity pump like Reebok pumps. I diggity bring the stuff to make a camel lose his pumps. Chumps, so wiggity where's the beef? Chief, he biggity fits the mold like the gold that's on his teeth. I rock some, I sock some, I drop some. So wiggity ready, set down. Punch 1, punch 2. I diggity dot my eyes and cross my diggity D's, bro. I swiggity swing more action than Hawaii 5-0.
Old School Bus, Daz Effects from the Hit Squad, Mike Checker. That was fun. Gotta love hip hop, man. Gotta love hip hop. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Well, I got a Petty Wop Award to give out later. Haven't done that in a couple weeks. Definitely got to do that today. Thank you all for checking on me during my bye week. I need a week off just like the football teams here, guys. I'm giving y'all information on the Philadelphia Eagles every single day. Make sure you guys bookmark InsideTheEagles.com, IGGLES. For those of you that don't know, 9 times out of 10 you do. But just in case you don't, and this is your first time hearing anything about me or us, bookmark InsideTheEagles.com. I'm confident that we have some of the best writers on the planet. True indeed. I love working with these guys. I love learning with these guys. Every day, exclusive NFL content, exclusive Eagles content, and the best Eagles content daily. Hang out with us. Got a Petty Wop Award coming up. Yesterday was a tough loss. Gotta admit that. That right tackle thing with Andre Dillard didn't really work, did it? So we tried a little bit of everything. Brandon Brooks had to leave the game, apparently due to his anxiety issues, and we're definitely praying for you, Brandon. Love that guy to death, man. Absolutely love that guy to death. Brandon Brooks leaves shortly after the game began. It was called an illness. We learned later that was partly due to some anxiety issues that he suffered with in the past. For that reason, Halapuli Vati was brought in. He played a little right guard with Andre Dillard still at right tackle before the struggles of Andre Dillard were a little too much. They then kicked Halapuli Vati, a.k.a. Big V, out the right tackle. You saw how that ended up. There was the fumble with Miles Sanders. That was ugly. Nothing was uglier than Ronald Darby's half-hearted attempt at a tackle on that long touchdown run by Rashard Penny. To be honest, had that not happened, the Eagles probably could have held them to 3 points. Kudos to this Eagles defense, by the way. They've been playing well. Now, let's not overstate certain things. Let's not act like Greg Ward had this superior performance for any other reason other than the fact that Seattle was willing to give up the underneath stuff, which led to some opportunities for Greg Ward. Now, you got to give Greg Ward his credit. When the ball came to him, he did what he was supposed to do. He caught the ball. He picked up the necessary yardage. Good job by Greg Ward. But let's not overstate what that was. Some of that was just given to him. Big V is bad. Big V is very, very, very bad. Big V is bad to the point where Big V is, to me, he's the Sidney Jones of the offense. They've invested a lot of time in him. They invested a draft pick in him. They've invested resources with him with the hope that he would be good and to contribute to this team. He has done some things that we will commend him for in the past, but Big V needs to go. Carson Wentz was historically bad. Brandon Brooks leaves. He did release a statement, and this was it. I'd like to address what happened yesterday. I woke up and did my typical routine of morning vomiting. It didn't go away like it normally does, but I figured it would calm down once I got to the stadium. It did, but I felt exhausted. The nausea came back, and I tried to battle through it and went out for the first drive. The nausea and vomiting came back until I left the field and tried everything I could to get back from my teammates, but just wasn't able to do it. Make no mistake, I'm not ashamed or embarrassed by this. Know what I go through daily. I've had this under control for a couple of years and had a setback yesterday. The only thing I'm upset about is that when my team needed me, I wasn't able to be out there with them and for them. Lastly, I appreciate the support of my coaches, teammates, and fans. It doesn't go unnoticed. Brandon Brooks, let me say this. There's nothing you can do to make us be disappointed in you as Philadelphia Eagles fans. You are everything that the Philadelphia Eagles organization represents that is good. We appreciate you and your contribution to this team. We love you. You should win the Comeback Player of the Year award in the NFL. If not, there's a problem. There needs to be an investigation. With that being said, let me say this. I was going to hold it, but there's no better time to do the Petty Wop Award than right now. Let me talk about Carson Wentz first, though. Carson Wentz posted something on his own social media account, Twitter, that I think was very commendable. Praise him in victory and defeat, the hills and the valleys, the good and the bad. No excuses whatsoever. Time to go to work and be better. Got to keep fighting and keep believing. Going to be a fun ride the rest of the season. Hashtag AO1. Hashtag Fly Eagles Fly. all the issues we saw with Carson Wentz, most of them have been ugly. Let's not sugarcoat anything. But Carson Wentz's issues to this point in his career have mostly been physical. The torn MCL and ACL, the literally had a broken back a season ago. But now he's going through some adversity. We're going to learn a lot about 11 based on what you see going forward. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about him in a minute, but I got to give out this Petty Wop Award. The Petty Wop Award goes to Alshon Jeffrey and Nelson Aguilar. Why? Because QB1, despite what you saw yesterday, gave us exactly what you're supposed to get from your franchise quarterback in defeat. He went to the podium. He answered every question. He said, I got to be better. I have to do better. Put it all on me. I'm to blame. He didn't point the finger at anybody else. Still never figured out who that anonymous guy was. He didn't go on social media and create a burner account, which I believe in my heart was Nelson Aguilar. Nelson Aguilar received some criticism. Who backed him up? Carson Wentz. Who backed him up? His teammates. He received criticism that was so ugly, apparently, that he decided to kill his social media accounts. But then all of a sudden, a burner account pops up that nobody is credited to, and that burner account was created to talk trash about Carson Wentz. Based on its tone, we figure that burner account was created by someone in the Eagles organization. I believe that person was Nelson Aguilar. Nelson Aguilar, as most of you know, has denied being the creator and the owner of that burner account. I still don't see why someone can't walk across the locker room and say what they have to say to that man face to face, man to man, but that's just me. Maybe I'm old school. But the Petty Wop Award must go to Alshon Jeffrey and Nelson Aguilar. Why? Well, why is simple. Why is because of what we saw from George Kittle on Sunday Night Football versus the Green Bay Packers. Now, as most of you know, George Kittle is often seen as the second best tight end in the NFL. Travis Kelce is viewed as the best. George Kittle is seen as number 2. Zach Ertz is seen as the third best tight end in the NFL by most NFL quote-unquote experts. George Kittle literally broke a bone in his ankle. There's some sort of fracture to a bone in his ankle. He was supposed to be out 6 to 8 weeks. He hasn't even been out a month. He missed 2 games. He came back last night in week 12 and racked up 6 catches for 129 yards and a touchdown. That includes a 61-yard touchdown catch that most of you saw that put the game away basically in the third quarter. Jeffrey has no broken bones. But he also has an ankle issue. His ankle hurts. With Jeffrey, we know it's not toughness. He played the entire 2017 season with a torn rotator cuff, for crying out loud. And kudos to him for that. The Eagles would not have won the Super Bowl, may not have gotten to the Super Bowl without Alshon Jeffrey. We know he's tough. We know he was cleared before last week's game. But if he could go, why didn't he? I hope that I have to write a retraction for this or make a retraction for this later. But I believe that Alshon Jeffrey and Nelson Aguilar, who got hurt because he fell on his knee and also couldn't play, I personally believe, and maybe more so Nelson Aguilar than Alshon Jeffrey, I believe the real injury has come to their hurt feelings. Their feelings are hurt, and that's why they sit out the game. Nelson Aguilar could have got out there. Alshon Jeffrey could have got out there. If he played with a torn rotator cuff, he could have played with a little soreness in his ankle. George Kittle just played with a broken ankle. And he racked up 6 catches for 129 yards and a touchdown, including a 61-yard reception. I wrote about this earlier today. George Kittle's raising a red flag about Eagles wide receiver Alshon Jeffrey. Check that out on InsideTheEagles.com, because I truly believe that's the case. Sometimes you look at other teams with a little envy. Sometimes you look over at another offensive line and say, why can't our offensive line play like that? Why can't we have skill? Why can't we have skilled players like what we see in San Francisco? Why can't we have Deebo Samuel and Emmanuel Sanders? You look at Minkah Fitzpatrick and say, why couldn't he have been an Eagle? Why can't we have that? Why can't we get a game wrecker and somebody who forces all these turnovers on defense? Why can't we have Jadeveon Clowney? Why can't we have Jalen Ramsey? You look at teams with a little envy. And yes, as I was watching the Sunday Night Football game and I saw what the San Francisco 49ers did to the Green Bay Packers, I said to myself, one, are they the best team in the NFC now? And two, I said, while I'm watching George Kittle with his ankle injury, I said, why can't Alshon Jeffrey do that? Is this hurt feelings we're dealing with? I hope not. Let's talk coaches. As mentioned, Jordan Matthews is gone. As mentioned, seemingly every Monday after a bad loss, this team is getting rid of somebody. Jordan Matthews was just signed on November 11th. 14 days later, they decided he wasn't the answer after telling us that he was. Doug Peterson, how's he doing? Are you satisfied? Doug Peterson's had a lot to overcome, and we've seen how good Doug Peterson can be. After losing his franchise quarterback twice in 2 years, once he won a Super Bowl. On another occasion, he took a team that was also 5-6 after 11 weeks, by the way. We were exactly in the same place last year. He worked that team into the playoffs, won a playoff game, and came within literally inches or yards from taking them to another NFC Championship game. But right now, you have to say what it is. Doug Peterson is calling bad games. His team is below 500. He's below average. Mike Groh is the offensive coordinator. Do we really need to go into this one? Is anybody satisfied with Mike Groh? Here's what's interesting about Mike Groh. Jeff Stoutland is the offensive line coach and the running game coordinator. So if he's the run game coordinator, he's take half of the coordinating responsibilities away from Mike Groh. That means Mike Groh is only the passing game coordinator. The running game is fine. The offensive line is decent for what it is. Jeff Stoutland has had to juggle things all season. Jason Peters got hurt. Lane Johnson is out. Andre Dillard has to go play left tackle. I have to piece together a roster. Oh, and we forgot about this part. After that happened, Dillard, we realized he's struggling, so we then kick Big V over to right tackle, and then Matt Pryor, who hasn't played all season, comes in and plays right guard. And still, this team was decent enough to win. And still, this team abandoned the running game that was working. Shout out to Jay Ajayi, 16 yards on 6 carries, if I'm not mistaken. 9 snaps. Probably see more of him down the stretch. Jeff Stoutland did what he's supposed to do, and he's taken half of the coordination responsibility away from Mike Groh. All Mike Groh seems to be responsible for is the passing game coordinator. And the passing game sucks. So Mike Groh gets an F. Jim Schwartz, let's not overstate what the defense did yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. They were bailed out by some weird things happening. Russell Wilson's got a tight end wide open in the end zone and overshoots him. DK Metcalf drops a sure first down and a sure touchdown. Is anybody besides me sick of seeing the other team's offense just barely miss on a few plays and then seeing our defense celebrate as if they caused the play? If Jalen Mills has nothing to do with one more play and gets up and wags that finger, I'm gonna pull my insides out. But let's be honest. Regardless of how they do it, the defense is getting it done. And they put the Eagles in position to beat the Patriots. And they put the Eagles in position to beat the Bills. And they put the Eagles in position to beat the Bears. And they put the Eagles in position to beat the Seattle Seahawks. The offense let them down. Can't give Jim Schwartz a failing grade for that, especially when you see what he has to deal with. Dave Phipp is the special teams coordinator. Now, Dave Phipp is interesting because I believe he's satisfied a lot of people based on what he used to do, and he's still being given credit for things that haven't happened in a while. Dave Phipp, we talk about the three phases of football all the time: offense, defense, special teams. Special teams really isn't a phase all the time. It dictates some field position here and there. We get some field goals here and there. Punt returns, we are stopping guys and flipping field position. But Dave Phipp, several years ago, took the special teams and made it a weapon. Don't forget, in 2015, when the Eagles beat the Patriots, it was largely because of a punt return by Darren Sproles. It was largely because of a blocked punt that was returned for a touchdown. The Eagles team was successful because we were taking kickoffs back for touchdowns. The special teams was a weapon. Now, it hasn't been as much of a weapon, but it's also hard to do that every single year and reproduce that and reduplicate that all the time. Dave Phipp, I'm not going to sit here and say the Eagles need to move on from Dave Phipp. He's as good a special teams coordinator as you can get in this league. Deuce Staley, I love Deuce Staley to death. He's from South Carolina. He's a Gamecock. He's the running backs coach. I think the running backs are the strength of his team. He's also been given another title, and some of that I've always believed to be his title because Deuce Staley is a hot topic in the coaching ranks, and rather than lose him, the Eagles have given him the job of assistant head coach and running backs coach. I realize he's great as a running backs coach. I'm not exactly sure what he does as an assistant head coach. As far as the coordinators, I think Philip Daniels has done a great job with the defensive line, but I think a lot of what the defensive line does and is successful at is because of the fact that they actually have talent along the defensive line. But I can't overlook the fact that Josh Sweat can't get on the field and Sharif Miller is MIA and things of that nature. He's not developing these guys, but that can be said about a lot of the guys. I like Tim Hawk. I like the safeties coach. I like our linebackers coach. I like Justin, the tight ends coach. I like Corey Unlin. I'm interested in some of their assistant coaches, like Mark Bartram, a former Eagle, who's now an assistant tight ends coach. I'm interested in what he'll contribute. This is what I'm sick of. Press Taylor, the quarterback's coach, has to go. Carson Walch has to go. We make this argument a lot about, I've heard it a lot recently, especially leading up to the game. We should have had DK Metcalf. How did we miss on DK Metcalf and not get him and take JJ Arcega-Whiteside in his place? Arcega-Whiteside can play, ladies and gentlemen. He can play. Trust me on that. The problem is coaching. There's a problem when Greg Ward is one of the best receivers and nobody is able to diagnose this. Carson Walch didn't see this. Carson Walch didn't see why, he should be on the roster instead of Matt Collins. Carson Walch defends Matt Collins by saying, well, he lines up right and he plays hard. He's doing a good job. Seriously? It's Carson Walch's fault that JJ Arcega-Whiteside can't get on the field and be effective. That's what he's supposed to do. Stop asking for other people. Build up some of the guys you already have. Develop guys you already have. If JJ Arcega-Whiteside is not producing, if Sharif Miller can't get on the field, that's Philip Daniels' fault. That's Carson Walch's fault. And I'm not even going to get into Press Taylor. Carson Wentz's regrets. He didn't look like that when Frank Reich was the quarterback's coach, now did he? Let me tell you about something about Carson Wentz. Yes, Carson Wentz has to be better. Yes, Carson Wentz needs to elevate his level of play. Yes, Carson Wentz is a great leader. But you tell me Carson Wentz wouldn't look great in New Orleans with Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, and Sean Payton. You tell me the Rams wouldn't have won that Super Bowl last year with Carson Wentz on the field when this team couldn't score. You don't think Carson Wentz can get them 2 touchdowns? You tell me Carson Wentz wouldn't be the guy in Kansas City with Andy Reid, an offensive-minded coach. You tell me if you send him to Tampa Bay and give him Bruce Arians and Mike Evans and O.J. Howard. You tell me that he doesn't automatically make that Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense better. Tell me that. You can't do it. Be careful what you ask for. Some of y'all are ready to run Carson Wentz out of town. If he goes somewhere else, you're going to be looking at Carson Wentz for the next 10 years like, what were we thinking? It's coaching. Now, there are some issues, and I wrote about this earlier. Had he gone to, like, the Jets, yeah, we'd be talking about when is he ever going to beat the Patriots. He's a great quarterback, but when's he going to beat the Patriots? Maybe if Tom Brady ever gets out of the way, maybe it'll be Carson Wentz's division then, but he wouldn't win the AFC East if he was the Jets quarterback. And forget that they're a snake-bitten franchise who just can't ever seem to get it together. Carson Wentz in another uniform would shine. Carson Wentz has shined in Eagles green. Why can't y'all see that? Y'all keep talking about Nick Foles winning the Super Bowl. Why can't y'all remember that it was Carson Wentz that put him in a position to do that? They don't have home field in a 9-game winning streak in the 2017 regular season without Carson Wentz. Come on, guys. Now Carson Wentz must be better. He makes too much money for us to be making some types of the excuses we have. There's no excuse for him missing Miles Sanders on that first touchdown drive. That wasn't a touchdown drive. It ends up in 3 points. There's no excuse for that. I can't defend that one. I can't defend him missing wide open people. I can't defend some of the things I'm seeing recently. He's pressing. He's trying to prove that he's the guy that we keep saying he's not. He's trying to prove he's worth the money. And he's pressing. But let's not act like some of this isn't his fault either. But at the same time, too, Wentz, Donovan McNabb had a lot of the same issues he had. And he won anyway. And Randall Cunningham always had the issues that you had. They'd never put anything around him. And he won anyway. Quiz yourself. Can you name any offensive line from left tackle to right tackle that Randall Cunningham had? You remember great offensive linemen when Andy Reid was there and when Donovan McNabb was under center. And yet Randall won anyway. Some of that has to exist in Carson Wentz. Heck, Tom Brady is the GOAT, the greatest of all time. He's never had anything around him. One time he had an elite receiver, Randy Moss. He went 16-0 and set the NFL touchdown record at the time. Love you, Carson, but you got to be better. Last night on the Storm, we had a friend of mine, gospel rap artist, Anthony Andrews, also a businessman, also an entrepreneur and a realtor. It's what Christian hip hop is all about. Kingdom takeover is what he calls it. Faith-filled people and God-loving people and followers of Christ who demand respect in every other industry that this country knows. Shout out to him. There was one more thing I wanted to get into here. This team should look very different by the end of the 2019 season, whatever that is. If that includes the playoff berth, then fine. But you know we're not going to make any noise in the playoffs, right? Look at some of the names on this 2020 free agent tracker. Now, Some of this I'm doing off the top of my head. I wrote some names down. Everybody from Nigel Bradham, Rodney McLeod, Ronald Darby, Jason Peters, Nate Sudfeld, Nelson Aguilar, Vinny Curry, Josh McCown, Timmy Jernigan, Darren Sproles. There's a lot of names on this list. Jordan Matthews is gone. He was signed in 1 year. He's gone. Nelson Aguilar is not coming back, and I doubt he gets another job anywhere else in the NFL. Would you sign Nelson Aguilar with the tape that you've seen this season? This is a contract year. If he's not going to be here, he needs to show he deserves to be somewhere else. He hasn't done that. Jay Ajayi, jury's still out. Let's see how he does. Jordan Howard, the reason he was signed to a 1 year deal in the first place is because we were worried about his durability. And it hasn't helped that with the fact that he has that stinger and he's missed the last 2 games. So there's some durability questions, but at the minimum, if you were able to get Jordan Howard for a bargain basement price, would you take him? I would, because Boston Scott has to go. I still to this day can't explain field of the punt within their own 10-yard line. I can't explain that fumble. Thank goodness that it went out of bounds against the New England Patriots. He stunk it up against the New England Patriots. I'd never want to see him out again after that. Who lied to us and told us that this guy was the next Darren Sproles? Oh, yeah. The Eagles coaches. I'm sorry. Corey Clement. I want to love Corey Clement because of what he contributed to this team. Because of his story, he was the undrafted free agent who made play after play in the Super Bowl, who was part of the Philly special, who caught that pass in the back of the end zone, who caught that long catch and run to set the Eagles up in the red zone that eventually led to the Philly special. I want to love Corey Clement, but he's not going to work out. Nate Sudfeld and Josh McCown, both of those guys need to go. I don't believe Press Taylor and the Eagles coaching staff that Nate Sudfeld is good. Josh McCown is 41 years old. Greg Ward, we mentioned him earlier, have no idea why he wasn't on his team on the active roster in the first place. Cameron Johnson needs an extension. I'd re-sign Nigel Bradham and Camus Rouget Hill if the price was right. Jason Peters, we should have moved on from him 2 years ago. When did we become a nursing home? These are not your relatives that you love. These are football players. When they stop producing, you have to move on. You can't be emotionally attached. That's what the Eagles used to be good at. They're not good at that anymore. You don't put Jason Peters in a home and start sending him checks. Jake Elliott. Now, we've seen what a kicking game can look like when you don't have one. Jake Elliott seems to be good at everything except hitting extra points consistently. But I'd rather have him here, hope for better things, than bring in some stranger and lose a game on a double doink, especially in the playoffs or something of that nature. Jake Elliott has shown that he'll come up big in big spots. Big V, we mentioned him, gotta go. He's becoming the offensive version of Sidney Jones. Rodney McLeod just turned 30. I think $7 million for Rodney McLeod is too expensive. I think you can break that money up and get a couple of guys. But if the price is right, I'm not opposed to bringing Rodney McLeod back. You know about Malcolm Jenkins? I like Malcolm Jenkins. I know you guys don't, but not for that price tag. Timmy Jernigan, he'll never be the same guy that he used to be. After that surgery, we've been hoping that he could at least become some similar to what he used to be. He's not going to. Timmy Jernigan's not that guy anymore. Hassan Ridgeway is 25. I think Hassan Ridgeway can be good. I would sign him if the price was right. Vinny Curry is only good to Jim Schwartz and Vinny Curry. The last time he left Philly, he's always underachieved. The last time he left Philly, he did so because he thought he deserved a big contract somewhere else. He got it with Tampa Bay, and they gave up on him after a season. He's back. He's 32. He's making $2.2 million, and he's still bad. Ronald Darby is awful. I can't stand him. I don't have anything nice to say about Ronald Darby. Craig James just isn't that guy. The Eagles will go into next season with a lot of money to spend. The Eagles have some holes, but they can be filled. This is fixable. I said this team was going to beat the Patriots and they were going to run the table the rest of the season. Well, they had a chance against Seattle and they blew it. Now you got the Miami Dolphins, the Giants, the Redskins, the Cowboys, and another game against the Giants. They can make some serious damage down the stretch. All 5 of those games are winnable, but after what we've seen the last 2 weeks, all 5 of those games are losable as well. I'm disappointed in a lot of what I've seen, but I also know it's not over. This team can be good, this team can put on a run, and this team can finish 10-6. I'm not sure they can beat the Cowboys. If they played like they played last week, I'm not sure they'll beat the Miami Dolphins. Forget what you think about the Miami Dolphins. They're tough out. They're not going to give up. Did you see how they played yesterday? Oh, but that was the Cleveland Browns. Never mind. Still, if the Eagles put forth the type of effort that we saw yesterday, they're not going to beat anybody else, ladies and gentlemen. Accept it. Embrace it. Let's all move on and be happy. Thank you for tuning in to Birdgang Weekly. I hope I did you guys proud. Like I said, follow me every single day on InsideTheEagles.com. Follow us on Twitter at InsideEagles. Follow me at GQ_4_EVA. It's the same on Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram. I got a Facebook page with that same name. Holla at me. Bookmark Thunderstorm Media. The Thunderstorm Media Instagram page is now live. Make sure you go like that. Some of you still aren't. You asked me to start an Instagram page and you're not following it. So check us out on Instagram. But you do rock with us on Facebook. I know that's a lot of you guys' weapon of choice. Those of you that have not, bookmark Thunderstorm Media. Bookmark us on iHeart, on Deezer, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, however you listen to your podcasts. Bookmark the Thunderstorm and Birdgang Weekly. And you can also find classic episodes of the Thunderstorm from our Blog Talk Radio days. You can check that out at the Thunderstorm Hip Hop Sports Entertainment Network. Love you guys. I'm going to ride out with the bus one more time. Hope I made you proud. I hope you got yours because I got mine. But the Sixers are playing. Got to check them out. Much love. I'll holler at you guys real soon. Crank the bus up. We go out with another classic. We played it last night. They loved it. We'll play it again. Montel Jordan, Shake Heaven. And can we please get off the narrative that Kanye West needs to stop talking about God in his records? Isn't that what we were supposed to want if we're in the Christian community? Aren't we supposed to want people to change, turn to God, and to have other people do the same? Leave Kanye West alone. Sure, some of the doctrine is a little off. You don't think the Holy Spirit can fix that? Somebody had to get you when you were saying some crazy stuff. If Kanye West brings one person near Jesus, he did his job. Just one. And he's done more than that. Some of what he says isn't completely on base, but you let the Holy Spirit take care of that. I'm proud of him, and I'm proud of Montel Jordan, a former secular artist who did the same thing. We go out with the bus. Shake Heaven. Montel Jordan. Holla at y'all later.
this marvelous life.